I think the biggest similarity between folks who have recently immigrated to the United States and Latinx folks who have been born in the United States is that we get placed in the same box.
It doesn't matter if you speak English or not. It doesn't matter if you're born and raised there. You're still a Hispanic and you don't belong.
And it does affect the way that somebody lives with HIV and access care for HIV.
Una de las cosas que mi padre me dijo cuando yo salí del closet como gay es de que no me podía apoyar porque sería como apoyarme a que me muriera de SIDA. Y eso pues para mí fue muy fuerte, ¿no? Porque era como sentir que eventualmente eso se iba a cumplir, ¿no? La profecía se iba a cumplir.
My husband, I don't need a condom, I'm good, I don't have anything. So I took his word for it, as many of us women do. Because we're supposed to make them feel like macho man. Yeah, well, my mistake.
I found that I was HIV positive in 1988 and I was pregnant. I was 9 months pregnant.
They told me, you test coming positive. And those words mark my entire life.
I was in the Navy and I was about to get transferred when I found out I was HIV positive. Back in 1994, there was no as much information as we have nowadays. I felt that the end was near.
I came down with an AIDS diagnosis, and by 96, here I was, young girl living with AIDS, have 2 children.
And it was interesting because I kept thinking, why do I have this? Once I understood it, why do I have this if it's only white people that get it? Because at the time, that's what the news showed us. Like, we didn't get information uptown, like the clinics and people weren't talking about it. And it was just whatever the news gave, and a lot of it was just more fear than anything. And so, of course, everybody was afraid of me.
I did not want to go outside because people would look at me and say, oh, look, she has the monster. I was so skinny, you could tell. So they would say, oh, she has the monster, she has the monster. They did that with my brother also. He fell in the street and they didn't want to touch him. They said, don't touch him, because he has the monster. I'm sorry. And it was horrible. They treated you like if you had leprosy. My mother told me, come and stay with me. I will help you. I will give you the strength you need.
In the Latino community, family is very important. I think it's like almost everything, The impact of having a family that accepts you or don't accept you when you come out as being HIV positive is big. If my family rejected me, what I'm expecting from the world?
La presión de saber que yo había sido diagnosticado, no podía decirle a mis papás, me llamaban, ¿cómo estás? Estaba quebrado totalmente, estaba roto por una parte de no saber cómo manejar la situación.
You don't know how to tell them that, but at the same time you want to tell them because they're your support system. But you're scared that that's the one thing they're going to reject you for.
I know of some that have been kicked out of their homes for telling their parents that they're living with HIV or that they're gay or both.
We call it the double whammy when you have to say that you're HIV and gay.
And I know of others who, when they've shared it with their family, were rallied around by their family.
The way that I get out of the closet of HIV, it was not me, it was my mom. She was the one that sat down in the bed and told me I start getting emotional.
I tell her to my mother I want to say something about my status, and she say, I know you are HIV positive. And then what made me cry and made me so vulnerable because she found my medications long time ago, like 5 years or 3 years or 4 years before I decided to. And she lived with that inside and loved me a lot. So I feel bad.
And I started crying and crying and crying, and she was the one that was strong enough to support me.
The stigma and shame when I became HIV positive was huge for me because my family was very religious. So church was a really big part of my life. It was one of the few places where actually I felt safe.
Faith and church for Hispanic communities is one of the pillars of a way of living. God and religion, mostly Catholic and Christian religions, are in the center of almost everything that Latinx people do.
I enjoyed my time there. I really loved being part of that community. But the fact that I was gay and that I knew I was gay was always in conflict with that spiritual world, right? So I knew that there was something I couldn't talk about, there was something I couldn't say.
Well, I grew up with my grandparents, and we didn't talk about sex. I remember one time I made a comment about sex. It was about 5 o'clock in the afternoon. My grandfather sent me to bed right away without eating dinner or nothing, just go to bed.
People are told from a very young age that these topics are shameful. The impact that has, the impact that stigma and shame have, which are generated from outside sources and then very frequently internalized by people, that has horrible implications for the prevention and treatment of infectious diseases, and especially for HIV.
I had my baby, and I was quiet, and I didn't say anything. I have to admit that I was quiet for like 4 or 5 years. I didn't tell anyone that I was HIV. Why? I was afraid. I was afraid. I didn't want nobody to know that I was living with HIV.
I avoided everything related to HIV.
No me gustaba ir a la clínica de México porque siempre que vas, todas las personas que están ahí viven con VIH, básicamente. Entonces te encontrabas amigos, exparejas, compañeros de trabajo, de todo, ¿no? Y era muy incómodo, muy incómodo.
If I live in Queens, I will go to Brooklyn to get a test, so nobody will know me, you know? They will go the long way not to find anybody that they know, seeing that they're getting an HIV test or getting healthcare services.
There were some agencies that were trying to sort of, they realized, oh, this community needs support. And I remember it was difficult for them to be in the room. Like, people did not want to go to the tables. They were giving you free condoms, and by that time, we kind of understood what you needed to do, and people still were afraid to even go to the table. And that's another form of stigma, right?
And I said, oh my God, what's wrong with me? This internal stigma is killing me, is eating me inside. I can't. So I said, Lily, you must take the horse by the rein and start galloping. You see the British are coming, well, this Puerto Rican is coming, okay? Yo no voy a dejar que esto me acabe. I said, this is not going to end my life. Some doctors don't respect you. They look at you, they see you're Hispanic, and they assume 1,000,001 things. They assume you're on drugs, they assume you're a prostitute, they assume you're reckless.
I contracted HIV in 1986 at the age of 14. It was the first time I had sex. They say you have HIV, you may develop AIDS, you may not.
She just came in with my chart, threw it on the table, said, you're positive, and walked out and left me there.
And we were like, okay, but we didn't know what that meant.
No more question. I was crying and crying. She never gave me any support. She never gave me any referrals. She never told me what to do. I didn't know what else to do.
And there was like no follow-up, like you need to see us. You have to stay connected to any form of care. And we just went home.
Even for a local person that was born here, there are obstacles. For a recent migrant, you won't be seen.
Decidí mudarme para Estados Unidos en el 2019 porque primero no quería correr el riesgo de perder mi vida. En ese entonces El Salvador estaba pasando lo peor de la inseguridad y más que todo para la comunidad LGBT. Muchas personas de la comunidad fallecieron a manos de las pandillas más que todo. Y segundo, mi diagnóstico.
I started medication in Colombia. At that time we have cocktails and I have so many side effects, like terrible, terrible side effects. In United States, we can move here and we can get the medication in just one pill.
Vi la oportunidad de venirme y no lo dudé. Me vine con un poquito de dinero en mi bolsillo y con grandes sueños.
We have to remind ourselves that people who migrate to the U.S. do not migrate because they found a great job in a multinational or something like that. They do migrate mostly because they are fleeing from violence, from discrimination, from homophobia, from poverty.
They're straight up refugees, right? They are asylum seekers.
They have a lot of needs unmet in their countries and they are trying to find a better way of living. But the reality is that being a recent migrant is extremely hard.
Immigrants, they live in a fear environment all the time, and especially those that they don't have papers. I was afraid to people to know that I was HIV positive, especially at the house that I was living the first time, because the family, they didn't know that I have HIV. So I have to hide my medications on my shoes and things like that. And so many fears.
Fear of rejection, fear of testing, fear of receiving services.
You know, how worried are people going to be that ICE is going to be near the hospital that they're going to?
I was under the impression that because I'm an immigrant here, my children would have been taken away from me because they're citizens, and I thought I was going to be deported back to Trinidad.
It requires so much courage, I think, sometimes for people to seek treatment, to seek care.
Another thing is that when we get to this country, you know, there's a whole other thing that we have to adapt ourselves to, which is the culture. Not understanding the language, not understanding how things function.
Yo quiero mencionar algo muy importante. Para personas inmigrantes, está bien que hablemos inglés, ¿verdad? Pero no saben lo difícil que es, porque no fue fácil aprender inglés.
When I got here, it was hard to find services because of the language. I know where the services were, but I didn't want to go because I was thinking like, how I'm going to communicate what I need.
Y siempre que llegaba a una clínica, yo solicitaba algún traductor, pero estas clínicas no me lo accedían, ya sea por teléfono o en persona, y muchas veces como que ver esas caras de que no te quieren atender porque eres hispanohablante y no te aprendes el idioma, entonces a una la decepcionan, a una le bajan todas las emociones. Muchas veces sí entraba en depresión por lo mismo, porque estaba lejos de mi familia, en una ciudad que yo no conozco y más que todo sola.
People who migrate to the U.S. usually migrate alone. And that creates a big phenomenon of depression, anxiety, and loneliness.
I was very much involved with drugs. I was on a relationship with a guy who used to beat me up. So it was being abused, using drugs, having HIV.
I sort of like went into this suicide mission, smoking crack and heroin and all of that I used to do for about 3 days, nonstop. I asked someone for some money to eat, and this African-American woman gave me $5. I got me something to eat, and then I don't know how I got on a bus, and I ended up in a treatment center. When I was at this treatment center, I enrolled in a computer class.
Y yo ayudaba en todo esto. Me involucré bastante y comencé a informarme más que todo y a educarme. Fui entrando poco a poco y ahora pues comencé siendo recepcionista.
I was able to get my first job doing this kind of work at a social service organization.
World, the organization at Auckland, that they work for women living with HIV. That was my first job in the community, like formal job. And that was like the best job that I ever had because I was working for Latinas living with HIV.
When I got to the community center, they had to a meeting, it was ACT UP. This is 1988. I always said it was a religious experience because getting to a room where you see a lot of your peers, people, young guys my age, HIV positive, but with a different attitude, not the victim perspective, but the fighter, the advocate, the activist perspective, it changed my life.
I've dedicated my life, yes, to working in this field. Some people tell me, Chloe, please stop talking about HIV, but I can't. When I was interviewed at Channel 47, I told my mom, she goes, oh no, you can't, because everyone in this building watches Channel 47. I said, well, I'm sorry, Ma, I'm not doing it anymore. You know, I can't allow you to stigmatize me like this.
Vivo con VIH, no significa que me voy a morir, ¿no? Pero sí es algo que mucha gente lo sabe, ¿no? Y finalmente, como es algo a lo que me dedico y que yo hablo abiertamente sobre mi historia para que otros no se sientan solos.
You know, a lot of my friends weren't talking about HIV or if they had HIV, living with HIV. And so I felt that me being open would allow for them to see that you can be open and we could share stories together and, you know, hopefully survive this crap.
And yes, family is important, but what about them that comes here and leave the family in their countries? They don't have the family now. They need us, the Latinx community, to be there for them and to support them.
This is my spiritual path, this work with the community. They are like family too for me. And I see their struggles and they remind me my own struggles. And I see their resilience and they remind me that I'm resilient too.
And to be the first person where somebody can talk about their HIV status, to me is very meaningful.
I want to make sure that I, in some ways, give back, that I don't forget where I came from. My family, they are very proud about me and my status. And they know it's not easy, disclose the status, but it's part of my life and part of my mission in this life.